this non-conference schedule, yes, you mentioned that SMU is a team where progress can be evaluated a little bit better and more accurately, but it's really a schedule where the coaching staff is going to have a lot of room to evaluate players, figure out what works, what doesn't work, what combinations in the secondary offensive line work, what doesn't work, all of that before really running into an opponent most likely that's going to push them for 4 quarters.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark. And I would even extend that into the first two conference games. Oklahoma goes to Cincinnati and hosts Iowa State before Texas. So no, I think if we're in a situation when we're looking at this team after the first 5 games and they're anything but 5-0 heading into Texas, then I think there's cause for concern. Outside of a major injury, because you'd mentioned Arkansas State as well. You have to have a little bit of respect for Butch Jones and what he's been able to do. But again, not a great team a year ago. SMU, they were hit by the portal. They added some folks from the portal, but they'll be breaking in a new quarterback with Tanner Mordecai moving over to Wisconsin this year, and then Tulsa's in a little bit of a rebuild as well. And that'll be just a glorified home game for Oklahoma, even though it is in Tulsa with Kevin Wilson starting, his first year. So yeah, I mean, I think those first three games will give Oklahoma an opportunity, as I mentioned, particularly on the offensive side of the ball to get ready, for conference season. It's a road test, so I think that's a good to start with against Cincinnati, but I think Cincinnati is going to be significantly down from what they've been in years past. They've got, I think they only returned 9 starters from a year ago. The roster was kind of gutted to a certain degree with the Fickle move over to from Cincinnati to Wisconsin, and you've got Emory Jones as probably their starter at this point, which doesn't put a lot of fear into most people's eyes. And then you host Iowa State before Red River, and who knows what kind of team they're going to have when this kicks off with their their situations. I don't think Deckers I don't think he's even practiced, from what I understand. And Jameer Brock, the first team running back last year, is no longer on the team. So yeah, I mean, I think, and this is, sort of as you talk about the Big 12, Mark, I think you could certainly see a situation where Oklahoma may not necessarily be roster-wise as talented as Texas, maybe not as talented as Kansas State, but the schedule sets up in such a way that it's going to allow them to have, should allow them to have a solid year. I know you had this up on the screen a minute ago. If I think the dividing line for me is 9-3. I think anything below 9-3 with this schedule is cause for concern. So certainly 8-4 is a possibility, right? You've got some tricky road games towards the end of the schedule when you go to Oklahoma State. Obviously, the last Bedlam game that we will see, I wouldn't say ever, but for quite some time. And then you go to Kansas, which is arguably may have one of the best offenses in the league. I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do on the defensive side of the ball. And you go to BYU, which is kind of a trendy pick for an area where Oklahoma could fall. And then you've got TCU at home as well. So you've got the latter part of the year that's really kind of the schedule is backloaded to a certain degree. So, I mean, you could see a situation where they could lose 3 games, but if they lose any more than 3 with what you would hope as, you've got some increased, talent on the field with the recruiting classes over the last couple of years, with what Oklahoma's done on the transfer portal being very, very active, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. For that is, and I think Oklahoma doesn't have to be astronomically better than they were a year ago. If they're a little better, 0-5 in one score games. A year ago, 5 of the 7 losses outside of obviously the blowouts against TCU and Texas, Oklahoma had every opportunity to win those. So if they're just marginally better, and this team doesn't have to be doesn't have to be a top 20 defense. If they're just an average defense, and I mean, you hear this time of the year with everything that Oklahoma has, it's a big ask to go from 122nd to top 20 in a year. Not many teams are able to make that jump, but if this team could be, I don't know, Mark, top 40, top 50 overall defensive team, I think that would be enough to, kind of flip the script on some of those one possession games where they're able to make that difference this year.
And that's a statistical ranking that means a lot. I don't want to discount in any way the statistical rankings at the end of the year. I think are 80 or 90% very indicative of how good you are on either side of the ball. However, this defense, if they can't improve significantly in those rankings with a non-conference schedule that gives them very little resistance and an in-conference schedule that gets them off to a great start, as you mentioned, not just from the standpoint of the probability of a win, but the probability that they're going to hold down Cincinnati and Iowa State